What's going on, everybody? My name is Michael, aka Skyxx148, and welcome to the season 1 podcast recap. And wow, it's really been 20 episodes at this point. As you may read in the title or you may not, this is going to be a short episode because essentially I'm just going to be going over the other podcast episodes, some behind the scenes stuff, things that happen, my favorite part of the episode, maybe least favorite part, memories, experiences, and I'm just gonna take a moment to look back on what was only really a couple weeks ago, and just rejoice and to end the podcast season 1 here. We got season 2 coming up here shortly, which I actually should extend until we start that, but that's going to be super fun, and I'm super excited because it's going to be a whole nother chapter of podcasting and a whole nother chapter of streaming for myself because these podcasts have really been fun and have really been a really good way for me to just talk, open up, and majority of the time after I do these and some of the solo ones recently, it feels good to just talk, even though I have a set couple bit of topics or not beforehand. It just felt good to talk, and I don't know, it's fun, and I'm happy to finally get a co-host back, and I think season 2 is where this podcast is really going to get back on track. We're going to get Joseph in here as the co-host. Now, I'm not entirely sure it means of him being the co-host all the time because, sometimes people are busy. Sometimes people got things going on, and that's no really problem. So I plan on having him as the main co-host as many days as he possibly can be with me, which I'm hoping. And season 2 is going to be super fun. I'm going to update the thumbnail soon, but first episode right off the bat is going to be on Snyder Cut and some of the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, what we think so far. So yeah, if you have not already, please follow me on my social medias, Skyxx148 on Instagram, Twitter, and here on YouTube. Subscribe to me on YouTube because, one day if I can get a plaque on my wall, it would just mean the world, I've been doing YouTube for, I think it's like 6 years now. My little hopes and dreams and ambitions of wanting to be a big YouTuber and recording, and I used to stick to a schedule and record off my sister's phone. I've really gone a long way. And even though I'm still doing a lot of my stuff mobile and I'm recording this on a free website, or not recording this, but I'm streaming off of a free website, I think content and maturity wise, this channel's gone places. I've definitely grown. I got 215 subscribers. I'm very thankful for all of you that tune in and listen and have stayed subscribed because, when you look at it in retrospect, yeah, I'd like to be this big YouTuber with thousands of subscribers, but 200 people, at least 200 individual people subscribe to me. Like, that's cool. That's like my whole school or half of my school. It's cool to think about in retrospect. Maybe some people see it as a number and thinking that's small, but imagine if those 200 people were sitting in the same room as you. I'm sure you wouldn't think the same thing. Yeah. So, how have I been? I've been good. I've been watching the Falcon and Winter Soldier. WandaVision already ended. The Snyder Cut came out. I've just been good. I've been slacking on the podcasts. I have had no ambition or motive to record one of these by myself. Sad, I know, but it's all good. I'm doing this now because I really want to progress into season 2, which will happen soon. So without a doubt, let's get into our podcast recap. So very first episode, I'm looking at this on my phone. Very first episode of the podcast was talking about Hamilton. This episode was coming right off of my hiatus of watching Hamilton in July and really loving it, but also like looking at it in different retrospects, politically and ambitions and motives through it. And this is also where I had my co-host Tim. We started this. Was our baby, um, my baby at least. Yeah, I know this was a really fun episode. It was an hour and 34 minutes long, and I cannot I cannot encourage the fact more that we didn't force that. Um, I had an agenda written out for all the questions and stuff we're going to talk about, but I think the conversation of that podcast was just really awesome. I think it was a solid start, and it was a really good start. Yeah. Episode 2 comes along, and it's a Beetlejuice chat with other discussions with one of my friends, Ricky, as like a guest. Ricky, I mean, if you're listening, you're awesome, but you're not a good person to interview in my eyes, because I think if I remember correctly, you didn't really answer to many things. But besides the point, I still had you on another time. Beetlejuice chat, essentially. I think Tim watched Beetlejuice through, but I'm the one who really took the show and geeked out over it and used that as a idea to talk about, and it was awesome. There's not much about it, nothing really memorable. Third episode was 21 Jump Street with Nonsense and mini guest Eli Ellis. 21 Jump Street was a really solid show, little tiny show. I'm surprised that we got so much talk. Well, not really, but we had a lot to talk about the show, about the themes and the plots and all that. And it was interesting. And now this is also kind of the time where I think voting was becoming a huge thing and encouraging people to vote. So we would talk about politics, and looking at the thumbnail alone, there was Epic Games versus Apple. It was all about the hashtag RIP Fortnite and something about Fortnite, which was just a subtopic that we can talk about, and it was alright, I guess. Nothing much to add about that. Next episode was Newsies with mini guests Crystal and Aiden. Oh yeah, last episode, Eli was just someone I found on my Snapchat and thought, why not have him join? Newsies chat, Newsies. I watched on Disney Plus like 3 times in total, but I love the show, and we just went over it, reviewed it, and the mini guest was my sister and my nephew at the time, and I think it was a really cute guest segment and all that, and it was really solid. The Greatest Showman talk with guest Dan. Oh my. This episode was definitely, I think, the best episode of the Skyxx148 podcast, because we got Dan on. If you don't know who Dan is a person that is a performer, and he's in theater, and he's a very professional actor. And we got him on, and we talked for a while, went way over what we had scheduled, because the conversation and the questions were just really awesome, and there are a lot of things to relate to and talk about, and it was just a really good episode for a guest. Also, our main thing, well, not really main thing, but our sub movie to talk about at this point was The Greatest Showman. And I remember the chat was shorter than what it could be, and that's it. Yeah, so after this episode, this was the last episode before me and Tim got in an argument, if I remember correctly, or some sort of thing that we didn't agree on, and there was a huge gap between that podcast with him and the next podcast with him. But in between that was episode 6. That was just a podcast short. It was just me talking with Ricky about news, and it's audio only, kind of like this episode. But this episode is definitely going to have a little more meat to it. I don't know. That episode 6 was kind of bad, but it's all right. Next episode 7 is when Tim came back for co-hosting. We're back, baby. This was a pretty good episode, if I remember correctly. The conversations were extraordinary. The topics were awesome. We talked about the Xbox Series X, how Hamilton's doing, 21 Jump Street, because we didn't get to talk about that very much, because in episode 3, there were things that stopped us from talking about it. Among us, Joe Biden, because Joe Biden was an interesting character here. Yeah, and it was a really good episode. There's good conversation, and this is where we started trying to only hit that hour mark instead of hour and a half mark. Because I feel like before, the hour and a half mark was nice, but we were kind of pushing it because, sometimes you just can't get enough content out of an hour and 30 minutes. Episode 8 was Console Wars, and this was the first episode where I said, hey, Tim, you should lead the episode, write the agenda and all that, and he did to the best of his extent, and that's how it is. Beetlejuice playbill and Hamilton playbill. I think we sang Beetlejuice and sang Hamilton. It was another Console Wars thing. What was that? I'm not sure. I believe this episode was pretty good though. Pretty good conversation. Next episode 9, was on Hades Town. Fortnite Season 5, question mark. Oh, this was a really good episode, in my opinion. I mean, the talk about Hades Town was amazing. The memes with Krydos was amazing. Talking about the Galactus event. I mean, we really milked the hell out of the Galactus event in Fortnite and questioning Fortnite, but it was a really good episode, in my opinion. Very strong conversation. Next was Gaming Stream. It was the 10th episode of the podcast. In all of my opinion, this is probably the worst podcast that we did. It just wasn't good, in my opinion. Not at all. It was just badly streaming our gaming, and it was just because we really had nothing to do for the podcast. But yeah, it's the worst. But next comes episode 11. These next couple podcasts are probably ones that I'm very proud of. This was the next Christmas movie reviews and Christmas plans. So at this point, I invited Tim to my school's film club virtually, and he joined, and we reviewed movies for the film club and for the podcast. We both went over. I talked about Nightmare on Elm Street. He talked about Christmas Vacation, I believe. And I think this was a really good episode. After the gaming stream one, this one was really solid. Next was Christmas, around Christmas time, and it was the Frozen playbill, or the Frozen show on Broadway, talking about a closing and all that. I believe this episode was pretty good too. Much to talk about. Run home with that one. And this was the week that I went over to Tim's house to sleep over, and we had fun. Go to Six Flags. Then literally the next week for New Year's, the prom on Netflix, Happy New Year's. This episode is where Tim came over to my house, and we recorded a podcast together in the same room and same thing. And I remember it came to an abrupt end because there were some issues going on with my nephew, but it was a solid podcast, in my opinion. The chemistry was great, the singing was great, and it really didn't matter what we said. Just the connection and all that was just awesome. Next podcast, I think, was also one of the higher ranked podcasts of ever. The Ratatouille musical, How Was Soul, guest Flo. Now, we had a guest on, Flo. He's from Austria, if I remember correctly. He does some Lego content, and we asked him some really good questions in terms of, what happens politically over there, what are your interests, and this and that. And Flo was a really good guest. He talked a lot, and he was a really good episode. It was a really good episode, really good guest. I remember I put on there some questions for 2021, but didn't really get to that. We talked about Soul. we had a really good conversation about Soul. Me and Tim watched it together. We talked about Ratatouille, a lot about Ratatouille, and it was pretty decent. After this, Tim left the podcast. Well, creative differences, I should say, but he left, and it was just me through the rest of the podcast until one of them. So, Dear Evan Hansen, Cyberpunk 2077 game review, and more. So, what happened in this one? Talked about Joe Biden, things that he's done, some hypocrisies. I reviewed Cyberpunk 2077 because I played that game and I thought it was a really amazing game. So I thought, hey, why not talk about it? And then I also talked about Dear Evan Hansen. I don't remember the conversation very much about this one, but Dear Evan Hansen was a really good show. Next was Waitress, Biden the Worst President. And it's episode 16. Talked about Waitress. When I watched a Waitress bootleg, I was very shocked about how good the show was. And I liked it, you know? It was really solid. And I also talked about Biden, the worst president. I believe at this time, Biden was elected into office, and he's already done some questionable stuff. And then I also brought in a segment called Questions for Michael, where I had some people fill out a Google form with questions for me, and I answered them, and I thought that was pretty solid. I also should say is as soon as I started doing my own solo podcast here, I tried making the benchmark to hit 30 minutes by myself, which I think I did perfectly. I never went under it. It was really solid. I really got a lot of talk out of it. The next one is the Mean Girls musical and Late Night Hangout. This was a podcast I did later in the night, later than I ever have before. And it was a really solid podcast. Talked about Mean Girls, talked about WandaVision a little bit. And yeah, next episode 18, I believe. I talked about Wicked. Wicked was a really good show. I rewatched a bootleg. Talked a little bit about Gina Carano being fired and hypocrisies and stuff like that. Podcast season 2 plans. And the Unknown Paranormal Society, which was a paranormal group that I'm a part of with some other people. I'm a social media manager and editor and all that kind of stuff, and it's been fun. And then the next episode 19, is oh my god, it's one of the best podcast episodes in a long time, in my opinion. WandaVision discussion, new co-host, and more. So, this podcast episode, we really went in depth talking about WandaVision, about the show, what happened in the show, and all this and that, and it was really solid. It was a really good episode. The chemistry was great. I think I talked about Hamilton just a little bit, pop figures a little bit, went into Joseph about his art and everything, and, ambitions, all that kind of stuff that you ask, I guess. And on the thumbnail, I do have Justice League as something we talked about, but it was actually more of a teaser to what season 2 is going to be. And that really ends it all. That's me talking about all the podcasts. And episode 20. You want to hear about episode 20? Well, you're listening to it right now. Yeah, fun, right? Well, this podcast, episode 20, this one's been, I think it's been pretty fun. It's been fun to just lay back and relax, audio only, talk about the other podcasts, a little bit of everything, memories, and explain some things. It's been fun. I'm really grateful for everyone who's ever tuned into the podcast and the views we've gotten on episodes and all that. It's been really fun. I hope that this podcast in the future will take me to greater lengths, and it will open up some doors to do some other things, bring some more guests on, and I'm really looking forward to what season 2 has to offer, because I hope to be putting a little more effort into it and actively seeking some guests and just making a better show, because this is what it is, podcast. It's a show. So yeah, that's all I have to say around that. In terms of things coming in the future, I really, really want to start doing some content in terms of just YouTube content, vlogs. So I might be doing that soon. I'm going to the Marvel Studios exhibit next weekend, or in a week actually. I'm going to go see the Marvel Studios exhibit, walk around, see some outfits and stuff that Marvel actors wore, learn some stuff. That'll be fun. I will vlog that if I possibly can. And then April 24th, Six Flags is going to be opening, so I think what I'll probably do is record a vlog of Six Flags, and I don't know, um, just talk about the COVID things that they do, food wise and rides wise, the precautions they take, and all that. And I think that'll be pretty solid. Um, Hopefully I'll actually do it and not just be lazy, which I have done in the past. But we shall see. The podcast has just been great times. So yeah, that's really all I have to say here. If you'd like to, go follow me on social media, Skyxx148 on Twitter, Instagram. Subscribe to me on YouTube if you want to continue to see these podcasts happen, which will be happening more in the future. So subscribe to see it. Other than that, this has been the Skyxx148 podcast, season 1. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you in the future.